inquiry. They see the Gaddafi plot as one of a sequence of false flag terrorist operations designed to give the UK and the USA the pretext to attack oil-rich Middle Eastern countries. Annie will be addressing us on this and other examples of crimes of the intelligence services. Annie is the author of a book called Spies, Lies, and Whistleblowers, which I've read and I commend it to you. It's from a British publisher, Spies, Lies, and Whistleblowers. You can get it on Amazon. It's an amazing book of what they've revealed about the intelligence services in the UK. And I am honored and privileged to introduce Annie Machon.
Rather than swanning around Monte Carlo casinos. They also are supposed to work within the law, just like MI5 is, but seem to manage not to most of the time. We also have something called GCHQ, which is the Government Communications Headquarters, I suppose the equivalent of the NSA. And in fact, they have a very cosy little relationship with your NSA. They have an infrastructure called Echelon. I don't know how many of you have heard of that. It's a wonderful relationship because in order to follow the law, GCHQ has to get warrants to intercept any UK telephone numbers. And I understand the NSA is supposed to do the same thing if they want to intercept US telephone numbers. Well, they used to. I know it's changed slightly recently. So in the past, of course, GCHQ would intercept all the US stuff, the NSA would intercept all the UK stuff and share everything. It was wonderful. Wonderful little sidestep around the legalities that are supposed to protect our civil liberties. Anyway, so those are the three organisations, and as I said, David and I were recruited to work in MI5 in the early 1990s, and it was a very long and drawn-out recruitment process, about 8 months in Dave's case and 10 months in mine, and they went to great pains to tell us that MI5 was not the way it had been portrayed in the media. It was not some evil, right-wing, fascistic sort of organisation that investigated innocent left-wing activists. Oh no, they had changed. They were now a fully legal organisation that had to work within the law and had to get warrants in order to do things which would otherwise be illegal, such as bugging our telephones or breaking and entering our homes or whatever. In fact, MI5 was founded, just to give a little bit of history, way back in 1909, and its primary purpose was to investigate the threat of German espionage in the run-up to the First World War. They had moved on slightly in those 80 years, but all that time they didn't exist officially. They worked within the shadows, and anyone who ever wanted to ask anything about them in the Houses of Parliament were told to shut up. You cannot do this. It's national security, old boy. Just keep quiet and don't rock the boat. Effectively saying that they couldn't report anything more that he had to say about MI5. They banned it. Now, it was all entirely predictable. Of course the government was going to do something draconian like that. And of course, the national media in the UK was up in arms. Yeah, what about press freedom? You can't gag us. This is all in the public interest. So it all looked like actually we're going to get a lot of media protection. It looked really good for a brief period of about 5 hours. Unfortunately then, Princess Diana died that night. And you can't really compete with that as far as news headlines goes. I don't know. I could say a few words about the Diana thing. I've been asked about it a few times today. Is there people interested? A little detour? Okay. It was interesting timing. The reason I want to raise this particularly with personal experience of the case, I mean, I know there's all sorts of speculation about what really happened and was Henri Paul drunk and, you know, why they took the route they did. It was completely circuitous. But David and I had personal involvement in it. Apart from the timing, which really screwed our lives over for about a year afterwards, about 2 months after her death, we had a mysterious phone call. And it turned out it was Mohammed Al-Fayed, who wanted us to go to Paris and look at some documents he'd been offered. So, at this point, we're living in a very remote farmhouse. Black Ritz Mercedes comes to pick us up and take us to Paris. And almost crashes twice. So that could have been a good headline. Anyway, we look at the documents. He's been offered these for sale from a guy who's very vague about how he got hold of them.
Oswald the Winter.
That's the one. These were documents purporting to prove that there was CIA and MI6 involvement in Diana's death. And they looked good. But if you knew what what a document really looked like, what a proper MI6 document looked like, there were some simple errors, things like the date timeline, things like the addressee list, they just weren't quite right. They were forgeries, they were very good forgeries. And this would have been a classic straw man technique. You know, Al-Fayed was asked for $20 million for these documents and probably would have paid if they were real, because he was desperate to prove that there was a plot against his son and his possible future daughter-in-law. Anyway, we saw that they were forgeries, they were fakes, and it saved him $20 million, but also saved him embarrassment. This would have been a classic straw man operation, whereby he would have bought them, held them up to the world's media and said, look, I've got proof. And then the authorities would have turned around and said, look, it's so obvious, look at these simple errors, of course they're forgeries. You can imagine what would have happened. Anything else he ever found out, he would have been dismissed as a fantasist. So, you know, his entire campaign for justice for his son would have stalled pretty much before it started. Anyway, as the lady down there said, the guy who was trying to flog him these documents was a well-known con man called Oswald or Oscar Lewinter. He was also notoriously an MI6 agent. He was quite well known. Most agents were pretty, their identities were quite tightly held. He was pretty well known, though, because he seemed to get involved in all sorts of dodgy activities. So that, to us, proved that there was an MI6 interest in this. And then, of course, we started looking at the other evidence and all the rest of it. And I have to say, my personal opinion, I think, yes, they did intend to at least seriously injure or kill her. And it's not just about the fact that, was she pregnant, wasn't she? We'll never know, because they embalmed her against all French law so quickly. And all the other speculative things you see in the press. It's also the fact that it was reported that she was being a great success in the landmine campaign that she was running. Yes. But also, she was about to go into campaigning on the behalf of the Palestinians. Now, you can imagine someone of Princess Diana's profile doing that. They would not have tolerated it. They could not have dealt with that. So I think that's why she was taken out. I think they'd probably been planning it for a while, and it was just perfect timing. They did it when they did.